All right, guys. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today, we start a new section called the Reconstruction. All right. Now, this is the time right after the Civil War, and basically now the country's done with the Civil War, and now it becomes like, well, what do we do now? You know, that's like the big question that goes around. So, the objective today, we're going to analyze the meaning of the 14th Amendment. We're going to examine the effectiveness and the meaning of the Freedmen's Bureau. We're going to look at that and create an argument on legitimacy of Southerners taking a loyalty oath. And you're going to see what I mean when we get to that part of the lecture. Okay, so here's the thing: we are doing our LPAC. This is something we'll be doing in the future. All right, we'll be doing this off and on for the next month or so. This warm up question asks you, think about a time when you were a child. How has your life changed from when you were a child till now as a teenager? So think about it. Think about like when you were 6 years old. Do you still see the world the same way? Do you still watch the same movies, TV shows, things like that? What entertains you? What entertained you when you were a kid, and what entertains you now as a teenager? On the verge of adulthood. All right. So don't just put like, oh, I'm taller. Don't put that. That's a cop out. That's a too easy of a thing. But really think about it. How have you grown? How have you changed? How has life, the experiences you've gone through from when you were a kid till now, how has that changed you? Okay, so sit down, really think about it. Okay, so what like I told the other classes, what you're going to do is basically 5 minutes. Okay, take a minute or two to think about three things. Let's go with three things you have, how you've changed. Okay, put the timer on for 5 minutes, and then at the end of the 5 minutes, whatever you wrote, that's it. But try to write complete sentences in paragraph form. Okay, try your best. Okay, so pause the video, put the timer on. Okay, because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here's the thing. This is actually a picture of the conspirators who are hung. All right. George Ozerat is at the far right. The tall guy, that is Lewis Powell, the one who was stabbing Secretary of State Seward, yelling, I'm mad, I'm mad. That's him. Now, if you look at his height compared to the other guys, you can see he is really tall. And if you look to the left, the far left, um, you notice that figure looks a little different from the other ones because that's a woman. That is Mary Surratt. Mary Surratt owned the boarding house where the conspirators met. Because again, remember, her son was part of the original group to kidnap Abraham Lincoln. So they met at her place. And basically, what the government said was yes, she may not have a hand in it. She may not have been the one who attacked Secretary of State Seward. She may not have been the one who was supposed to go after Vice President Johnson or uh, Grant, but she had to have heard what was going on between the kidnapping and the murder. She had to have known what was happening, you know, and she didn't say anything. She didn't do anything to try to prevent it. So it's basically like guilt by association and guilt for not saying anything. Especially with something as pivotal as the assassination of the president. So they had a trial, and basically she was found guilty along with the other conspirators, and she was hung. And she is the first woman executed by the U.S. government. Okay? All right, so I know question number two asks you, based off that, what you've heard, do you think she should have hung? Yes or no? So take a second and write your response to that. What do you think? Should she have hung? Again, her son was part of it. They had the meetings at her place, And again, it's not like it's a big boarding house, you know. It wasn't that huge. And it's not like these guys were whispering either. So, what do you think? Should she have been hung with the other guys? All right. Now, the Reconstruction. This is basically any time it's a rebuilding of a nation after a war. So when you hear Reconstruction, it doesn't necessarily mean just us after the Civil War. It's France after World War One, Germany after World War Two. You know, anytime there's a war, the after once the war is over, the picking up the pieces and rebuilding, that's called a Reconstruction. Now, on April 15th, 1865, this is when Lincoln is assassinated. Andrew Johnson is sworn in as president. Okay, he is the first president to take over an assassinated president. So this is a unique thing that's happened. Excuse me. Now, I've had some students in the past ask me, well, why did they swear him in on the day Lincoln was assassinated? That's the thing in our country. When a leader, one of our presidents dies, the vice president has to be sworn in as soon as possible. I mean, if they can get it within the hour, awesome. But there has to be a president of the United States. And the sooner they can do it, the better. Okay. So now that the war is basically over, new free black men were known as freedmen. Okay. So here's the thing that which was awesome that hey, now all these former slaves now they're free. Awesome. Now it comes to the problem of where do they go? Because now these slave owners are like, well, get off my property. You're no longer my slave. I don't want you here on my property. Get out of here. You know. So a lot of these newly freed men, women, and children were like, we'll leave. So they left, but then they came like, well, where do we go? What do we do? There's they have no money, no place to stay, no food, so it's like, well, what do we do? How are we supposed to live? You know. So the Freedmen's Bureau, this was created. It's a program to feed and clothe the refugees in the South using basically army supplies. So, the army people, they would have their uniform and maybe like undershirt, things like that. They would give um, the newly freed slaves, hey, here's a shirt. You know, we have some food over here from you for soup and things like that, or whatever it may be. We got some shoes, some slightly used shoes. So if you need some, here's some here. You know, about 300,000 people use the Freedmen Bureau every day. Now, is this the same 300,000 every day? No. What they would do is they would give them clothes, food for, couple days, several days, a week. Some places, if they had enough food to pass around, and another group would come in and things like that. They needed clothes, they needed shoes, they needed food. You know, the other thing that the Freedmen Bureau did is basically they helped them get jobs at plantations. Because again, you have to remember, these guys were not taught anything. It was illegal to teach a slave how to read and write. So now that they're free, a lot of them don't know how to do things. All they know is how to farm because that's all they've ever done. That's all they've ever known. So that's where a lot of times they got their jobs as going back to the fields but working. Here's the other thing though. Some former slave owners would tell these guys, like these freedmen, hey, okay, you can come back to work for me, but I can only pay you like, you know, 5 cents a day maximum. That's all I can do. The Freedmen Bureau would come in and be like, 5 cents for like the whole day. Yeah, no, you pay people by the pound how much of the cotton they pick or how much of the crop they pick. You pay by the pound or the sack full. So they would negotiate for the newly freed slaves. They would tell them, hey, you're going to pay them so much for every pound or sack or things like that. They would negotiate the prices for them. They negotiate the contracts, you know. So they knew, what these guys were getting paid and whether it was fair or not, you know. Um, so if you look at the picture above, that picture really is true, that where the angry white Southerners might see the newly freed black as, oh my God, you guys are taking advantage, this and that, la la la, we should do this stuff to you. The freedmen knew that they could trust in the Freedmen Bureau to protect them. So if you look at the picture of the guy, he has kind of his hand like, hey, I got this type of thing. That's because he did. He was watching over them, had their back, making sure that they got the best deal possible and that they were going to be taken care of. Excuse me. So some Northerners, they actually felt that, what, these former slaves, they worked that plantation land for quite a while. Their mothers, fathers, great grandmother, great grandfathers, their ancestors worked that land. You know what? They should be given that land. If not all of it, then a portion of it. So that land should be taken from the plantation owners and given to the slaves. And since they worked on it all their lives and never got paid, they deserve some of that land. And if they have their own land, then they can grow their own crops. When they grow their own crops, they could pick it. And when they pick it, they can sell it. When they sell it, they have money. And they have money, they can buy things. And it just is a pattern. Then they can progress, they can grow. That was one idea that some Northerners felt would be fair and it would assist the newly freed slaves in the future. Then there were some Northerners who said, you know what? Okay, that plan sounds cool, really cool, awesome. But here's the thing: if you take that land from the white people, the white plantation owners, they're going to get mad, vengeful, and become violent. You are going to live well because you're a fellow Northerner, so you're going to be like, okay, fine, I think they should do this, but you don't have to suffer with the consequences of what happens. It's going to be these African Americans who are going to be hurting because these white uh, plantation owners are going to attack them and get mad at them. They're not going to do anything to you. They're not going to go all the way to Massachusetts or Pennsylvania and, you know, beat down your front door. No, they're going to take their anger and rage out on these African Americans. The other thing they felt too was if you take away land from these people, you're basically hitting the heart of what our country is all about: the right to individuals to own property without the government coming in and taking it. So they're like, yeah, we're kind of going against what we believe in and what our own country is. Yes, granted, it's a sucky situation. A lot of these former slaves deserve better, but you're going against what we believe in. If you truly believe in what this country stands for, you're going against that. If you believe we should take the land away from the white plantation owners. So March 29th, 1865, President Johnson grants amnesty to all white Southerners who take an oath of loyalty to the Union. So basically, it's like, hey, you will be forgiven. You Southerners, you Confederates, if you give an oath of loyalty to the Union, you can get back your lands. That's it. Just say, yes, I promise to follow the laws of the land and I believe in the Constitution of the United States. And that's it. You have to just say it. You don't have to mean it. You just have to say it. And that's what some of these Southerners were like, wait, We don't have to like prove anything. We just gotta say it, and we get our land back. Yeah. All right, I'll say it. What do you want me to say? You want me to read it? I'll read it. Okay. The other thing was, in order for a state to come back to the union, they basically each state had to get a new governor who denounced secession, who basically said separating from the union was a bad thing. We shouldn't have done that. Slavery is a bad thing. It cannot be in our state anymore. And that a new state constitution is written basically saying those same things, that slavery is bad and we don't believe in it. You know, once a state did all those things, got rid of the governor, denounced that, hey, we shouldn't have separated from the union. We believe slavery is bad and no longer should be in our state. And we drafted a new constitution. Once they did those things, they could then join back into the union. Now, it's one thing for them, again, just like the oath taking, to say these things, but to actually practice it, that's another thing. Okay. And you're going to see that as we go on through the Reconstruction era. So here's my next question to you. Do you believe that the former slaves should have gotten some land from the plantations that they worked on after the war was over? Why or why not? Okay. Now write down at least 2 points that says yes or no, whichever you believe, and then one counter argument, one that goes the opposite way of what you believe. So I got the writing prompt right there for you. I believe that former slaves shouldn't have gotten land from land they worked on as slaves because la 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 la. Another point to my claim is la 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 la. However, and then whatever your counter argument is to your argument. Okay. So let's say you're saying yes, it's for hey, they should get land because of this reason, because of this reason. But on the other hand, this could happen, or this may happen, or this could have done, this could have disrupted this or that. Okay, so that's use the writing prompt to help you guys out. Okay, so pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. So December 2nd, 1865, Mississippi creates this thing called, it's a series of things called black codes. These are basically laws that are created to basically attack and hurt African Americans. Now, it wasn't laws like, hey, they have to go to slavery. No, it was more hitting them and hurting them in ways that could be considered legal, right? So some of the laws forbid African Americans from leaving their job, rent, and owning land. So let's say an African American works for a plantation owner, and they're like, you know what, this guy, he treats me horribly. Yeah, he's paying me what he said he's gonna pay me, but I'm being treated horrible. I want to work somewhere else. According to the black codes, there in Mississippi, there was laws that said no, you cannot leave. You can't get out of this job. You're stuck here. So basically, it is kind of like stuff they made them slaves again, but without making them slaves. You can't leave. If you can't leave your job and you're stuck there and you're not happy, yeah, it could be seen as like you're forced, and can be seen as a way of slavery. Once other states saw that the federal government couldn't really do much about this because, again, stuff like this was a states' rights. It has nothing to do with the federal. So other states, southern states, were like, well, if they're Mississippi getting away with it, let's do it too. And they followed Mississippi's lead into the block codes. However, December 18th, 1865, the 13th Amendment is passed and it's ratified by 27 states in our country. Okay. Um, At the same time, President Johnson is actually getting really, really upset with several people, particularly Thaddeus Stevens. And if you remember from the movie Lincoln, the old man I told you guys who was working, so many years of his life to try to get African Americans free from slavery, get rid of slavery, that guy. Senator Charles Sumner and Wendell Phillips. These guys were seen as radical Republicans because these guys were saying that African Americans not only should be free, they should have the right to vote, own property, things like that. President Johnson basically looked at these three white men and said, you guys are traitors to what our country is about, things like that. And they're like, what are you talking about? How are we traitors? Are we saying that the English should take over us again? No. We're saying African Americans should have the right to vote, should have a right to buy property, and get the best job possible. So, yeah, President Johnson really, really attacked these guys. And he also attacked a particular bill that came up. It was called the Civil Rights Bill of 1866. President Johnson vetoes it. Now, I don't know if you guys know what vetoes mean, but basically, when a law comes to the president's desk, he can say, no, I don't agree with this. That's called a veto. And then it goes back to the House of Representatives and the House or the Senate. If either group changes one single word in that bill, both sides have to vote on it again, and the president can get another veto. Because now, when you change one word, it's another bill. But if the Senate and Congress pass it again by 2/3 without a single change, the president can no longer veto. Okay? Because the House of Representatives and the Senate agree, no, this is what the people want, this is what our constituents want. So we're going to vote on it, and it passes 2/3, it becomes law. President does not get any more vetoes besides that one per law. Okay? So what this document said is that freed African Americans will be given full citizenship as long as they were born in the United States and its territories. And Johnson said, no, I don't like that bill. Vetoed it. All right. So here's my next question to you. Do you think Southerners took their oath of loyalty to the Union seriously? When they said, yes, I promise um, to believe in what our country is about, that I believe that, separating from the United States, was a bad thing, and we'll never do it again, and I believe in the law of the land. Do you think they really truly believed it, or do you think it was just air, just hot air coming out of their mouth? Okay, so there's a writing prompt on the bottom to help you out. Take a minute, write your response, because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. So April 6, 1866, the Senate and the House of Representatives overrides Johnson's veto of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. So again, they passed it without changing one word, and Johnson was like, he's helpless. He can't veto it. So it becomes law. June 13th, 1866, although fought by President Johnson and many Southern representatives, the 14th Amendment passes. What this means, it defines exactly what a citizen means. So when you're born in this country, you are a citizen. You get every single right that every citizen gets. Um, and this is, again, the historic because it's the first time that African Americans are considered citizens. This is monumental. It also provides federal protection for African Americans against state and local laws. So now that they're actually citizens, um, if a state made a law saying, "Oh, African Americans can't stay after dark after 5," well, does that apply to white people too? No. just African Americans. Well, how's that fair? You're attacking me because of my race. You're not attacking these other guys. Why? You're attacking me because of my race, even though I'm a citizen's country, just like that person. So that's in unconstitutional law. So this really does make a lot of African Americans equal before the law. And this also repeals the three-fifths clause. So if you were with me last semester, at the very, very beginning of the year, how we talked about in the Constitution, the word slavery doesn't come up until the 13th Amendment. And basically, they came to agreement, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, that for every 5 African Americans, they counted as 3 people. Now, with the 14th Amendment, it erases that. Okay. But now there's a big problem that wasn't foreseen by those people who hated slavery, and wanted African Americans to be treated equally. Here's the thing. In the House of Representatives, the more people you have in your state, the more power you get. Now that millions of African Americans are counted as citizens, those southern states now have a higher population. That means they're going to have more power in the House of Representatives. So when laws come up that says, should this be a law or not, um, a lot of these Southerners, now the Southern lands are going to have more power to say yes or no. Depends who is the Senate, the member of the House of Representatives, whether that person is for hurting African Americans or not. So here's your next question. With the South having more power in the House of Representatives, what do you think some issues might come up in the future? Okay. And again, I put on there, remember, each state has 2 members in the Senate, and the number of representatives of each state depends on its population. So with now more African Americans being considered citizens, now the southern states are going to get more power. So what do you think might be some issues that might come up? So think about it, write your response, because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, and now we've come to your exit ticket. Remember, pick one of these questions to help you that you feel you could best answer. Okay. So the first question asks you, how would you explain the 14th Amendment to a 10-year-old? Okay. Remember, it's what it means to be a citizen, things like that. So you may want to give examples of like what rights you may have as a citizen. You know. The second question says, besides feeding, clothing, and getting African Americans jobs, what else do you think the Freedmen Bureau could do to help out the newly freed African Americans? So again, besides feeding, clothing, and getting them jobs, what else could they do? Okay. The last one says, other than having the Southerners take a loyalty oath, what else could they made them do to show loyalty to the United States and its laws? It's one thing to just say it. Anyone could say anything. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I love you. If there's no meaning behind it, it's worthless. Which you guys probably figured out. More than likely, that's what happened with the Southerners at this point. A lot of them, it was just empty words. There was no meaning, no feeling behind it. So, what could the government do as a way to make them sure that the people actually believe in what they believe? How could they show loyalty to the United States and the laws? What do you think? Okay, so take a minute and think about it, all right? And then write your response. Once you guys are finished, that's the end of this lesson. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. There's going to be a lot more to the Reconstruction, so um, it gets better. It gets interesting as we get on. Okay, so you guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. All right.